Well, I think like, if you look in the dictionary, under jazz music, it says the music of the people. And I think jazz dance is very much the same uh, cultural art form. It's of the people. It's from the people. Versus classical dance or contemporary dance, which is a how do we say it? A more selective style, whereas jazz dance is a fusion of many different cultural dances. I think starting in Africa and but then pulling from so many other places to create this dance form that I still think today really represents um, the people. Well, I mean, I think that technically, you know, jazz dance has drawn from so many places, from classical dance, African dance, Caribbean dance, contemporary dance, modern dance, whatever you want to call it. Um, but I think the thing that is most important in jazz dance is style, and that's where the people come in. We have style. Our cultures have style. They have a smell and a taste and a history that we bring with us, a way of movement, a way of moving and feeling the music. And I think that that is what is so particular about jazz dance, added to a technique that has slowly, over many, many decades, been clarified and solidified. Um, but I think it is really the style and the passion of dance that makes jazz dance so very special. For me, when I was a young dancer and a young teacher and choreographer, I drew from everywhere. Um, I drew from my street dance experience. I drew from my Latin dance experience. I drew from ballet. I drew from contemporary. I love flamenco. There's so many things. And I think with jazz dance, you have permission to fuse things together versus in other dance styles that are more pure. Um, that is not so. Um, what is the word I'm looking for? It's not so utilized. And I think that with jazz dance has been probably out of most of the technical dance forms, whether contemporary or ballet, it's been the easiest dance form that has evolved with music. It's evolved with the times. It's evolved with the people because it's connected. We are connected to it versus ballet or contemporary. Sometimes we're not connected in the same way. Sometimes it is more technical or it's more cerebral, and so there is possibly a very select group of people that can relate to it. But I think jazz dance, because jazz um, is so connected, like you said, to music, and music is connected to where we are today, how we live our lives today. So, with those two things connecting, it's easy for us to evolve together, and to make jazz new, to find different colors and shades, and invent new things, new ways of hearing music, feeling music, moving to music. So jazz is, I think, a very accessible dance form um, by its nature. That's it's very hard to say. I mean, you could give a date, But America is big, and I think you could say when it became popular is one thing, but when it actually began, it probably began um, in back rooms, in dark clubs, in churches. Um, so to give an actual date is, I think, difficult. I would probably say, um, I'm just going to say this because I think, the American experience is very specific because us as Black Americans, we were brought over as slaves. So the American story has part of the American story is the Black American story. So I think the Harlem Renaissance, which was in the 1920s, I think was a big influence on the trajectory of jazz dance. During that period, you had Bill Bojangles Robinson, you had the Nicholas brothers. Then from then you had Catherine Dunham and then Alvin Ailey, and so. But I kind of sense that the Harlem Renaissance, the 20s, was really when this dance form became kind of solidified in the American culture. You could find it at the Cotton Club in New York. You could find, this new dance style with this new music. Jazz was new. Jazz back then was kind of like hip hop is today. It was the popular music. It was like rock. And I think parents were afraid of it. They didn't want their children to listen to it. Because it had this new energy, and it made people crazy. And I think that is the beauty of how people began to dance to it, how people began to feel it. And so I would probably, if I was to give a date, I would probably say around the Harlem Renaissance in the 20s. Josephine Baker was a big part of the Harlem Renaissance. Um, I am not a big person to say who was the first, because then it's very easy for someone to do research and find out, no, there was someone before her. Oh, there was someone before her. Oh, no. It's like with me, in my career, um, I started as a street dancer, and I used to do whacking in the clubs. And a lot of people want to say, oh, well, you're one of the originators. You're one of the OGs. You invented it. And I'm like, no, I was there at that time. I was privileged to be there at that time. And there were many other people there at that time. So I can't take credit for being the person that originated something. But I was there, and I was contributing in my own way. And I think that Josephine Baker was also there. She was a very, very big influence because she crossed barriers, um, and she did that very, very cleverly. She did that with African tradition. She did that with her beauty and her incredible body and the way it moved. She did that with a sense of humor so that people could accept possibly sexy movements that normally they might be offended by, but because she did it with a sense of humor, she was able to get into places that hadn't been gotten into before. Whether she was the first to do that, I don't know. I have a list here. I'm going to read the list of people. And then your students, your viewers, they can Google and find out who they are. I don't think there was one person, but I think that there were a lot of people. Okay, here's my list. And I know I'm missing people. This morning I was like, oh, I missed somebody. So okay. Um, Catherine Dunham, Jack Cole, Alvin Ailey, Bob Fosse, Michael Kidd, Luigi, Jerome Robbins, Hermes Pan, Donald McHale, Claude Thompson, Mathematics, Gwen Verdon, Cheetah Rivera, like I said before, Bojangles Robinson, Fred Astaire, Sid Charisse, Gus Giordano, Joe Tremaine, Michael Peters, Lester Wilson, Michael Bennett. I'm not sure if I said Joe Tremaine. I'll say him again. And I also want to add Mia Michaels. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mia, but I think that there is something that's happened in the past 15 or 20 years, uh, 15, 10 years with lyrical jazz. I think that Mia has been a big contributor to that style and that popularity. So those are people that
I agree.
inspired have inspired me. And there's many, many more. Well, it depends on how far you want to go back. I mean, you can go back to the 20s when you had, musicians and singers like Billie Holiday, and you had Count Basie, you had Duke Ellington, Dizzy Gillespie, you have Sarah Vaughan, you have Ella Fitzgerald. That takes you through the 20s and 30s and 40s, and then of course you have Little Richard and Elvis Presley, James Brown. Um, I mean, the list can just go on and on. Through Michael Jackson. Most of what Michael Jackson did and what James Brown did, people did long before them. Michael made the moonwalk popular, but you can look at old footage of dancers, mainly black dancers, and even in African dance, and you see the moonwalk. Yeah, but you can't say that the Nicholas brothers created it. They did it
Yes.
because there was someone before the Nicholas brothers who did it. So it's kind of like you build a trap in your mind when you start saying this person created this or this person created that. Because many movements have a history long, long before our lives, um, which might be go into the 1900s. So you could see the Nicholas brothers, or even before them, Bill Bojangles Robinson, who's one of my absolute favorite dancers in the world. You can see him do so many things that you either see Michael doing, or you see Bruno Mars doing, or you see, Beyonce. You see these movements, and even when I went to, for example, twerking, it's popular. Okay, okay, okay. The first time when I went to Africa, I saw twerking in Africa, but it was part of a cultural dance. It was part of a language. It was a part of a communication, but it was done completely in a different context. It wasn't so sexualized, but it made me realize in my mind what we're doing back home is not new at all. It has a story that goes back decades, if not centuries. So, you know, Michael, who was the king of pop, he made many things popular, like Madonna. She made many things popular. You can't say that she originated voguing. No, she popularized it. She put it in front of a camera, she put it in her show. But voguing goes back decades before her. So I think that there are celebrities who have helped us to discover these incredible movements because they're curious, because they also love it like we love it. Whether it's Michael Jackson, whether it's Paula Abdul, both of them loved the history of dance. And so they would go back. Michael loved musicals. Michael loved street dance. I was just with Paula Abdul last week. You know, she's an old friend of mine. And we studied together when we were teenagers with Joe Tremaine. And I know that she is always, like myself, she has been a student of our history. She has loved the Broadway musical. She loves tap dance. So she is always drawn from the past, just as Michael always drew from the past with most of his work. Um, Michael was also very connected to the streets, to street dance. He loves street dance as well. So that's where so many of his movements came from. Many people don't know that Michael Jackson was also a good tap dancer. You know, he studied dance. You know, he was a fan. You know, um, so anyway, I'm talking. Ooh, why dancing is in my life. Um, I don't have an answer to that question, but dance is like the air I breathe. It's like water. It's me. It's, you know, you put on music and my body moves. It's like asking me, why do you breathe? I have to. Um, uh, so dance, even from when I was a child, um, if music came on, or even if there was no music, you know, I come from a an artistic family, and there was always music in the house, and there were people singing and musicians playing music. So I danced from the first memory that I have. I always loved to dance. No, I started from the streets. Although my mother took me to ballet class when I was probably about 5 years old, 5, 6 years old, and I liked it, but I didn't like being the only boy in the room. And so I told my Mom, I like this class, but can I go play baseball or football, please? And she was like, okay, I understand, because she was a dancer. And it wasn't until I was 19, um, I went to a disco called Gino's 2, and I walked in, and my life was never the same. Um, so I became a club dancer, a street dancer, and I was doing whacking and locking, a little bit of boogalooing. I also did couple dancing, and that my one day my partner and I, we went to see Alvinelli. It was probably 1976, and she was a professional dancer. And I asked her, I was like, "Do you think I could do that?" Because it looks like those guys, they probably weren't 7 or 8 when they started dancing. They were probably teenagers when they started dancing. And she said, "Yes, I think you have the talent to do that, but you're very late at 19." So I asked her, okay, write me a list of where I need to go for ballet, for modern, for jazz, for tap. And she did that. And the next morning at 9 o'clock, I had my hand on the ballet bar. And that is how my technical career started. Because I was a street dancer, there's a woman, her name is Tony Basil. I'm not sure if you know who she is, but to everyone out there, Polish dancers, Google Tony Basil. She saw me in a nightclub dancing, and she came up to me and she asked me, "I hear you're the guy that dances with the girls." And I was 19, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm that guy." And she was like, "Well, will you dance with me?" And I was like, "Okay." I tossed. I did everything. Um, and We're in the middle of the dance floor. The music is pumping. It's like a film. And she's screaming in my ear, I have this show. I want you to be in my show. I want you to do exactly what you just did with me in my show. Are you interested? I'm 19 years old. Of course I'm interested. So from that, I did her show and a lot of famous dancers were in it. And she was also, she's an incredible dancer and singer. I'm not sure. Do you know who she is?
No. No.
She has this song. She has a song from many, many years ago. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Hey, Mickey. Hey, Mickey. I'm not sure if you know that song, but
I
anyway,
have to
that's Tony
Google.
Basil. Yeah, Google Tony Basil.
Okay, I promise.
Basil. So I did that show with her. And the great thing is that there were street dancers. I was the only street dancer and jazz dancer. And then there were four really, really good classical ballet dancers. And then Devo was doing the music. So it was this crazy, crazy show. And in the show, a gentleman named David Winters, who was a director and a choreographer, who Tony, when she was younger, had been his assistant. He was one of the original dancers in West Side Story. He was the little redhead with the curly hair. He saw me in that show and he asked me if I would be his choreographic assistant and lead dancer for Diana Ross. I said, of course. A few weeks later, when we started the job, he said he was also directing and was too busy to actually choreograph. Would I choreograph the and also dance? I said, yes, of course. And that's pretty much how my career started because Diana Ross discovered the Jackson Five. That's how I met the Jacksons. So when I did Beat It many years later with Michael Peters, who was my mentor and my teacher, I already knew Michael from years before. So that's quickly how, jazz dance and uh, street dance. And I loved ballet. Ballet became very important in my life. I studied with the Landrums, Graham. So my style, my contribution, I think, as a teacher was my class, and you've seen this because you've experienced my work. But in 1977, I fused all of these things together: street dance, jazz dance, ballet, contemporary, all together to create a dance form that hadn't been seen or hadn't been yet brought to a professional dance school. And some of my teachers at the time, because my class was very, very popular, they said, well, what he's doing is not real dance. It's just popular right now. And um, one of those people, his name was Joe Bennett, who was a classically trained jazz dancer. He was just jazz dance. If there was a photo in jazz dance in the dictionary, it would be him. Uh, he was one of those people that didn't think what I was doing was really dance. And about 6 months or a year later, he wrote me a note, and he said, I didn't appreciate what you were doing when you got here. I didn't realize that you're the future of dance. And I think what I was doing scared a lot of people, scared a lot of my elders. It's like, what's happening, you know? Um, and I cherished that message from him, uh, letting me know that what you're doing is valid. What you're doing is the future. What you're doing is going to move dance forward. And so now when I travel around the world and I do a lot of competition judging, and you can see dancers now who do everything. who do jazz dance, who do ballet, who do hip hop, who do house, who do Afro, who do voguing and whacking, and they just do everything. And I realized that part of that is because of my contribution in the seeds I planted, helped to plant 50 years ago. So, you know, that's who I am. My career took me to Vegas. It took me to Italy. From Italy, I worked with the star of the Moulin Rouge, and she called the Moulin Rouge and asked them to come down and talk to me. And I spoke with them, and I began choreographing at the Moulin Rouge in 1987. And I am still their choreographer, so that's almost 40 years. Well, the first show that I did was a show called Formidable, and then that ran 12 years. Um, the show that is currently there now, Ferry, has been running 25 years, which is a long time, Gosha, a long time, too long. But I am proud to say that in that show, I tried to push um, the the level of dance that they were doing in the past. I tried to push to make it more modern, to make it more energetic and have more style. And the owner, Jackie Clerico, who's no longer with us, and Doris Hogg and Rogero Angeletti, they trusted me. And they said, okay, do it. And I did my best. And it has been very, very well received. And before, strong technical dancers, they didn't necessarily want to do the Moulin because the Moulin didn't have that kind of dancing. It had the can, but then the rest of the show was more cabaret based. But after Formidable and Ferry, many strong dancers, you know, saw that in this show it's challenging. There is technical work, there's adagio work, there's modern along with serious jazz. Modern meaning, you know, dance like we do today. It's a little funky and so that show has I've helped to move the Moulin Rouge into today and into the future. And I can only wish them well for their future. And then I worked quite a bit in Stockholm. Uh, in 1984, I worked with a group called the Hoorays, who asked me to choreograph something. They were doing a contest. Little did I know that it was Eurovision Song Festival, and they won. Uh, and that was the first time a Swedish group had won since ABBA. And a lot of the reason they won was because of the choreography, because they had never seen in the Eurovision Song Festival like the singers doing like choreography. And these three brothers, they were really good. So, you know, my career has been um, very special in that I have been able to bring um, n- new ideas and new energy to different places in the world. And that, to tell the truth, is the reason why I decided to go to Poland, because I really felt like they need me.
Yes.
You know, they are hungry. They want to know what this thing is called jazz. And I was sitting in Italy, and I was doing a very important show, and my boss, he could not understand why I kept going to Poland, and he knew that, you know, maybe economically it wasn't, you know, a big job, but I was like, I feel like what I'm doing is important because these young artists um, want to know. So if someone doesn't um, take the time to help educate them about this art form, about this dance form, it is a shame. So they have asked me, and I'm going to go. I'm going to do my best to pass on um, the story and my story of dance and jazz, and hopefully it will help them to be a part of this big family um, that is jazz dance. I was in Italy for 35 years. So, and I lived there. So I did a lot of wonderful, wonderful television, because one of the things that drew me to Italy, because in the 80s I had danced in and choreographed a lot of music videos, because that was the beginning of MTV. But before MTV, I was lucky enough, because I started in the mid late 70s. Back then we had shows called variety shows. And in variety shows, you had singers and dancers and actors and comedians and live orchestras, and there was just art everywhere. But when MTV started, that television form became a dinosaur. It disappeared. And I love that. And when I went to Italy, I saw that they still did that. So that was one of the reasons why I chose Italy. I chose Italy even over Paris, because they had more work in Italy. They had more television work in Italy. So I did a lot of television. I did a lot of musicals. I did some fashion, because, Italy's one of the fashion capitals of the world. Um, I trained a lot of dancers. Um, and so a big part of my life, probably the biggest part of my life, I lived in Italy. Um, so yes, Italy has been very, very special. Well, yes, I have a huge dance tribe. I have and I am very blessed. I am bigger and better because of all of you. You have all enriched my life, but I've tried to share um, my dance experience from China to Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, South America. Um, but that's the beauty of dance. Dance has taken me all over the world.
It's
And
more
I
than
try to tell that to, yeah, I try to tell that to young dancers, this art form, this career, um, it can open doors, because we all speak the same language in dance. So just because there might not be a job here, there's a job waiting for you over there. So be courageous, be brave. Um, so yes, I have worked with tens of thousands of artists, and I'm very, very grateful for all of you. One, study your craft, because what we do, study your art, is an art form. And it deserves our respect and our hard work, understanding our story, because our story is rich. Um, Besides that, my other recommendation is be curious. Be curious about what can be. Be curious about what has been before us. Be curious about how much you can contribute, how far you can take your dance experience. Be curious. Well, I adore you and I am very proud of you. I really, really am. So I wish you in Poland all of the dance that is possible in the universe. I hope we see each other again. And like before, I'm happy to be a part of the Polish family of dance.
Of
It is
course.
an honor.